Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu mavit vishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 68 to 72 of chapter 2. Tasmadhyasya mahabaho,
Tasmadhyasya mahabaho,
Nigrihitani sarvashah,
Nigrihitani sarvashah,
Indriyani-indriyarthebhyah,
Indriyani-indriyarthebhyah,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Ya nisha sarvabhutanam,
Ya nisha sarvabhutanam,
Tasyam jagati sanyami,
Tasyam jagarti sanyami,
Yasyam jagrati bhutani,
Yasyam jagrati bhutani,
Sa nisha pashyato muneः,
Sa nisha pashyato muneः,
Apuryamānamachala pratishtham,
Apuryamānamachala pratishtham,
Samudramāpah pravishanti yadvat,
Samudramāpah pravishanti yadvat,
Tadvat kāmayam pravishanti sarve,
Tadvat kāmayam pravishanti sarve,
Sashantimāpnoti na kāmakāmi,
Sashantimāpnoti na kāmakāmi,
Vihāya kāmānyas sarvān,
Vihāya kāmānyas sarvān,
Pumāmscharati nisprihah,
Pumāmscharati nisprihah,
Nirmamo nirahankarah,
Nirmamo nirahankarah,
Sashantimadhigacchati,
Sashantimadhigacchati,
Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha
Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha
Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati
Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati
Stitva Syamantakaalepi
Stitva Syamantakaalepi
Brahma Nirvana Mricchati.
Brahma Nirvana Mricchati.
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So we have been seeing some of the principles mentioned in verse 71. Now, as I told you, this particular verse is so special from a sadhak's point of view. You know, if you take any scripture, generally certain verses become very famous. Like if you were to talk about the Bhagavad Gita, some of the famous verses are, like what comes in the 18th chapter, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. It's a beautiful verse. Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Surrender all the dharmas to me. Means me means to the infinite. So it's a very powerful verse. Similarly, Karmanyeva adhikaraste. You have the right to the action. Ma phaleshu kadachana, not to the fruit. It came in chapter 2 only. That verse became prominent. Now, there are other verses like this verse which have not become so famous, so popular, we can say, but they contain very subtle messages, very deep messages. But the deep messages are completely hidden. Not only that, see, certain verses are applicable even when when a person views at it in a superficial way. It will be directly applicable to life. Whereas certain verses will contain principles which are applicable only to people who have a lot of depth. That is, when I say who have a lot of depth, in terms of number one, appreciation, and not only that, in terms of seeking also. Actually, the very yogic approach which we are adopting is meant for serious sadhaks. That is, when I say sadhaks, you may not call yourself a sadhak. See, a person may not have come across that term. That is fine. What I mean by sadhak here is a person who is searching for the truths of life. A person who wants to better his or her life, better the quality of life. If a person has a mere casual interest, that person will not be against the yogic approach, but it will be difficult for him or her to be consistent, every Sunday to sit and watch this in a very committed way. That commitment will not come. Actually, if you go to the Himalayas, the masters generally take a long time to filter, to test the student before even introducing the yogic approach, because otherwise the master puts in all the effort, and if the student is not committed, then the effort, those efforts will go waste. Why did they keep such tests? Not to push away people, but to ensure that the message reaches that person who is seeking that message. See, whenever you give advice to someone, you should always give advice to a person who asks for advice. Generally, what do? Without any reference to whether the other person wants your advice or not, you go and give your advice. If there is one thing which is freely available in the world today, not only freely but available in plenty, that is advice. Any aspect you take, anything in life, everybody has a word about it. Everybody seems to know what the other person should do. So you always give advice to others. But does the other person really want your advice? That is the question. So when the other person really does not want your advice, you are only wasting your energy giving all your analysis and all that. So the masters kept a lot of filters or tests, not to push away people or not to be partial. There is no partiality here, but they are selective. See, there is a difference between being selective and being partial. Being partial means for some personal reason, just because you like someone or someone is related to you, you give them more than another person, even though the other person may deserve more. That is partiality. Whereas being selective means ensuring that this message reaches the right person, the person who is seeking it. You may then ask me two questions. One is, how do we say that this wisdom is meant for everyone? So on one hand we say that, and now I'm saying these masters are selective. See, when it comes to the practical application of the wisdom, the relative aspect, that is universally applicable. It's meant for everyone. But when it comes to the subtler aspects, that is meant for everyone, but not at one go. See, each one is at one stage of development. So everyone ultimately will have to come to these basic questions and start the seeking process, and they will have to gain this wisdom. But the time factor will vary. And the other thing which you may ask is, sir, then how is it that you're revealing this yogic approach just like that, free for everyone to absorb? Here also there are certain filters which are being applied. They are being applied without making them so conspicuous. That is why when we started doing this verse 71, you would have observed that this verse would have kind of stirred a lot of things within you. Am I egoistic? What kind of ego do I have? A lot of thinking process it would have triggered. Now people who are caught up with their ego, people who have the asuric tendencies, it is more of the Asuric tendencies, they, beyond a point, they'll not be able to take these messages. They will drop out. It's an automatic system, filter system which has been kept. And then this yogic approach is being revealed. So if you have been consistent, especially in attending this particular verse, every verse is special, but especially this verse because it goes to the core of the matter. If you have been consistent in attending these Sunday sessions and doing your sadhana, it means your seeking is deep. You should feel so blessed. It is not about how many verses we cover. It is about the depth. And here in the yogic approach, we are going to a very good level of depth. So you have to match it with the depth in your seeking. If your seeking is shallow and a very deep thing is given to you, then you will discard it and you will go your way. There is nothing personal about it. It is just a question of what your demand is and what is being supplied. They both have to match, no? The demand and supply. There was a person who mentioned to me that initially when he started attending the sessions, he came with the idea of, okay, let me learn the Bhagavad Gita. Let me see what is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. But as he started attending the sessions, he said his focus started shifting from merely learning what the Bhagavad Gita has to offer to learning what life has to offer. He has mentioned that these Sunday sessions have become the Sunday session has become like a tool through which I am able to understand what life is. I am able to enrich my life. I am able to improve the quality of my life. Very interesting. And not only that, what he has mentioned, the same thing even others have also mentioned, that is, earlier they used to look at how many verses have been finished, which chapter are we in, all those things. But over a period of time, as his seeking became more deep, what he says is, now I have understood that every verse is a scripture by itself. It's a complete wisdom. Not only every verse, he says every word which you are explaining, sir, is like a complete wisdom, complete capsule. There is a completeness about every principle which is being given. This is a wonderful development. I'm sure many others also would have experienced this. You may not have expressed this way, but this person has expressed it so beautifully. So I thought I should share this with you. So he says every principle is complete by itself. This is exactly the yogic approach. See, we generally think, now the Bhagavad Gita has 701 verses. Now, unless a person studies all the 701 verses, he or she cannot claim that I have gained the wisdom of the Gita. This is our common belief. But just imagine, supposing instead of 701 verses, the Bhagavad Gita had contained, let us say, 2500 verses. Then, when you would have finished 701 verses, you would have still not felt that completeness. It will still be incomplete to you. Unless and until you finish the 2500, you will not get the completeness. If the same Bhagavad Gita had only 100 verses, with 100 verses itself you will feel, now I have finished, I have got the message. So this shows that the whole thing is external, this kind of approach. There is no depth at all. When you don't have depth, you think that here a chapter starts, here the chapter ends, and the next chapter starts, and then that has an end, and the Bhagavad Gita itself has a beginning, has an end. So it is, it shows that your seeking is not so deep, your perception is not deep. Whereas in the yogic approach, it is, we can't say that the Bhagavad Gita begins in chapter 1 and ends in chapter 18. Every verse, every principle is the beginning and is the end of your sadhana also. When you are looking for length, then only your seeking becomes external. But if you are looking for depth, then your seeking becomes internal. It is a question of internalizing even one principle which is being given for life. It is a lifetime study, not of the book, not of the external scripture, but it's a lifetime study of yourself and your life. Through this wisdom, through this book. So every principle which was given to you from this verse, that is verse number 71, by itself has the power, it has the completeness to take you to the state of Sthita Prajna. As I told you, the capacity to penetrate has reduced considerably in this yuga, the Kali Yuga. That is why the length also has to be given to compensate. So if you want to really benefit from these Sunday sessions, drop these notions of now let me master the Bhagavad Gita, and when will this finish so that I'll master the next scripture and all that. Why I'm mentioning this principle to you is because, see, we have been going so deep into this principle of ego. Now, when your seeking is not deep, you will become egoistic with this knowledge. You will say, now I have understood chapter 2, because we are nearing the end now. So I have understood chapter 2. Now once you start chapter 3, you will say, now I am studying chapter 3. The ego will take over. Whereas when your seeking is deep, you will not say, I have finished verse number 71, I have finished chapter 2. You will not say that. That is, I am not talking merely about the language. For practical purposes, you may say in order to move on. But you will not have that inner feeling. Rather, your focus will be on absorbing the principles. The day you absorb at least one principle fully, only then you will be in a position to say, yes, I have absorbed something. I have completed something. So the question of developing ego itself does not arise with respect to yogic approach. Because another person has asked this question, sir, sometimes, I get this ego that I am doing this yogic approach, I am exposed to the yogic approach, whereas many others are not exposed. So that itself is giving me ego. How do I resolve that? The moment you get an ego like that, it means you are truly not into the yogic approach. You are just using the word yogic approach, the phrase, just because you say I am exposed to yogic approach, it doesn't mean you are really into it. They are just mere words to you. But if you are truly absorbing these messages, which is what the yogic approach is all about, then the ego will not surface. The ego will not, you will not develop an ego over that. Because you will be so busy in trying to absorb these sacred principles and putting them into practice, that you will not have time for these kinds of thoughts that, oh, I have completed this much, I am attending these Sunday sessions, whereas the majority are not attending. See, you will have no time for these kinds of thoughts. So a true sadhak, as he or she is absorbing these principles, will become very time conscious. He will not want to waste his time on unnecessary things. He will be so focused in absorbing and practicing this wisdom. So if you want to become a Sthita Prajna, you need to learn to become focused, not fritter away your energies into unnecessary things. And one of the most, I would say, one of the, there is something which is not at all necessary, is ahankar, ego in life. And our entire energies, all our time is focused only on that ahankar. If you see the world today, the ahankar is what rules everybody. All the time, effort, everything is being invested just to satisfy one's ego. And here these great masters are saying, this ego is not necessary. It is a non-essential in life. One thing is, they go further and say it is very harmful. That is a different matter. But prima facie, they say you're just wasting your time in something which is not essential at all. Because after satisfying your ego to a good extent, you will begin to understand that, this happiness which I get by satisfying my ego is very temporary and shallow. Then all the efforts which I have put there, for all these days, now what for did I put? At some point, everyone will get this question. Everyone will get into a state of deep seeking. It may be today, it may be tomorrow, it may be in the next birth also. We can't define that. That depends upon the particular person's karmas and what kind of choices he or she makes. So, this is the power of yogic approach. It has the power to transform you. So if you have a deep seeking, you will be able to appreciate this. The reverse also is true, the converse. If you start appreciating this, your seeking will become deep. You will not be satisfied with merely branding yourself as spiritual, or you will not be satisfied if others point out or praise you that you are nowadays more calm and all that. Those things will not now give you so much of happiness, because what does it matter what others are saying? Ultimately, it is what you are that matters. So you will start focusing on the essentials. So when you focus on the essentials of life, then you are a deep person. And when you become 100% deep, you will become a Sthita Prajna, an enlightened person. So, last week I was telling you about Vihaya Kaman. How do you deal with the uncontrolled desires and their various modifications? So when your desires are out of your control, it's a very dangerous situation. They will lead to various modifications like anger, fear, jealousy, hatred, sorrow, so many modifications, envy, jealousy. Now, once they develop modifications, they will cause a lot of stress within you. So when he says abandon the kama, what he means is with the modification, abandon all the negative forces within you. Whatever negative energy which you have stored within you, you need to abandon. Now you may ask me, sir, when should I abandon? That is, how do I know that the time has come to abandon a particular negative quality? The fact that you are being exposed to that part of this wisdom which says Vihaya Kaman means you are ready. The process may be gradual, that is a different point, but you are ready to start the process. So again, the ego can come and try to postpone. The tamasic ego can come and try to postpone. Probably I am not yet ready to apply this wisdom. So let me wait for some more time. The moment you are exposed, it means you are ready to start. Every material which you are exposed to, understand the fact that you are exposed to that material, that aspect of the wisdom means you are ready to start the application of that wisdom, absorption and application. So no necessity to postpone. So last week I explained to you about Vihaya. We'll cover that and I'll give you some more subtle points and then we'll move on. The word Vihaya is so powerful, it has many dimensions, out of which I had given you the 3 dimensions in terms of growth. So the first dimension is notwithstanding, in spite of. So whenever you have some negativity within you, now you first should have a goal and you should have chalked out a program. Now these negative forces will come and prevent you from doing what you ought to do in life. So when the negative forces come and try to prevent you, what should you do? Apply the sadhana of Vihaya there. In spite of that, put in your efforts to do whatever you ought to do. And then the second step, as you keep up your choices, that is when you keep exercising your power to choose, and when you keep putting in efforts, your inner power will increase. You will be able to overlook whatever negative force is there, and you can continue with your journey. You can focus better. And when you continue on the same lines, when you keep doing the sadhana of Vihaya, a stage would come where you will be able to completely leave behind all your negativities and move forward. So you should master this. See, even with respect to sadhana, that is, I'm talking of your personal sadhana. Every day you're listening to Yoga Sankirtan. Now, one day you will feel a little lazy. One day you may not have the mood to do the sadhana. Some other day you may have a lot of enthusiasm to do it. These fluctuations will be experienced. I'm sure all of you will be experiencing these fluctuations. Now, that is where you need to apply the Vihaya principle. In spite of all these moods, whether you want to do it or not, once you've decided, you've understood that this sadhana of Yoga Sankirtan is the highest, this is what can empower me, this is what can help me. Now, once you become clear about that, come what may, you should put your efforts to do that. Actually, our masters call this as rasa sadhana. Rasa means the various emotions, the various bhavas, moods. There are navarasas and all that which they have explained. I'm not getting into that part of it right now. But the point is, you can understand this as your various emotions which are running helter-skelter. Now, one of the ways, simple ways by which you can master your own moods, you can master your own emotions, is by practicing the sadhana of Vihaya. So one day you're feeling very sorrowful. Now, general tendency is, I'm feeling so sorrowful, so let me now do the sadhana later. One day you're feeling overexcited and overjoyed. So then you say, okay, let me now listen to the sadhana in the evening, I'm too excited now. The general tendency is to postpone the sadhana based on your moods. Instead, how will you apply this Vihaya in your personal sadhana? Simple. If you feel sorrowful, do the sadhana in a sorrowful way. It's better than not doing it. If you feel very lazy, do the sadhana in a lazy way, but do it. Because that sadhana will help you overcome the laziness ultimately. If you are feeling overexcited, in a very excited way, sit and do the sadhana, no problem. If you are angry, let us say, that person insulted me, anger. Now, sit for the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana in an angry way. That is the meaning of Vihaya, in spite of. So when you do that, instead of acting upon your moods, instead of acting upon your emotions, instead of becoming a victim to your emotions, now you are exercising your willpower to gain mastery over yourself. In the first attempt, you may not succeed, but slowly, you will start succeeding. And once you practice this with respect to the daily sadhana of Yoga Sankirtan, the amazing thing is the Yoga Sankirtan will start purifying you. It will start giving you so much of strength. Then you will be able to practice it with all the other aspects of life also. One day you don't feel like working. Still, you will be able to set it aside and go ahead and fulfill your duties, whatever you ought to do. You will be able to give your best in everything, whether you like it or not. As a master said, freedom is not doing what you like. Freedom is liking what you do. When you just simply keep doing whatever you like, where is the freedom? You are actually a slave to your own likes and dislikes. Whereas when you train yourself to like what you do, that is when you have gained true freedom. So a normal person does whatever he or she likes, whereas a Sthita Prajna likes whatever he does. That is the difference. That level of mastery can be achieved by practicing the sadhana of Vihaya. It is up to you only. So last week I just gave you these 3 dimensions. Now this week is a further development of that. First, take up this practice of Vihaya, this principle of Vihaya, and practice it with respect to your daily sadhana. Supposing you say, I am traveling, I am in the flight, sir. On that day I will be in the flight. No problem. Put your headphones on in the flight and do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana. No? Who is preventing you? Where there is a will, there is a way. So the more you practice this principle of Vihaya, it is going to build a lot of power within you. It is going to make you a master of your own rasas, your own emotions, your own moods. You will become a master of all the negative forces within you, negative and positive forces. That is, you become the captain of the ship. You will not be at the mercy of your mind. See, with respect to this point, actually he says, no, attains peace. If you do all this, saha shantim adhigacchati. Shanti is peace. Now the word adhigacchati means attains. If you follow these principles properly, then he says you will attain peace. Peace will come to you automatically. It's not actually coming from outside. Peace is already there within you. So you are removing all the coverings. Then whatever is there will start manifesting. You will start experiencing peace from within. So this word adhigamanam is a beautiful word. Adhigacchati is derived from the word adhigamanam. Adhigamanam, I'm just quickly covering that because it is very relevant to the point which I mentioned about Vihaya here. Adhigamanam actually means mastering something, but it is not merely mastering. There are several dimensions to Adhigamanam. The first step is acquiring. You need to put an effort to acquire this wisdom. If you sit and wait and say, let the right time come, then I will do the sadhana. Let the right time come, then I will attend these sessions. That right time will never come. So acquiring means putting an effort to get this wisdom. Number 1. The second dimension of Adhigamanam is obtaining. So when you put in the effort to get something, then you will obtain it. That the obtaining means that that will start belonging to you. You will start personalizing it in a positive way. So first step is put in your efforts to acquire the wisdom. Second step is obtaining, that is, make it your own. The third step is studying. The third dimension of Adhigamanam. Adhigamanam means studying. So that's what I told you, Swadhyaya. You should study yourself through this wisdom. It is not study of other things. See, today, unfortunately, study itself means gaining some information from outside. The concept of education has deteriorated to such an extent where they think education means to acquire more and more information, just to cram your mind with a lot of information, general knowledge. Whereas actually education means swadhyaya. Educate, derived from two words, edu and kate, the word education. It means to draw out from within. So your entire wisdom is there within you. Now all efforts to draw out that wisdom is through education, is through swadhyaya. So number one, acquiring. Number two, obtaining. Number three, studying, making an intense studying. And then learning. Adhigamanam means learning. See, this whole exercise should be done with the idea of learning. I've always said, no, be an eternal student. True masters never consider themselves as masters. Sometimes some masters may have played the role of a guru. That is a different thing. But deep within them, they always consider themselves as students only, students of this infinite science, of this infinite wisdom. See, if you really think about it, this wisdom is infinite. I told you there's this one verse, I can go on for the rest of your life. So much is there. So when you see the vastness of this wisdom, then automatically you get into the spirit of learning. There is a natural humility which you acquire. There is no effort to be humble also. It is that what I call as natural humility, inbuilt humility. You just start learning things in life. See, this is a very powerful principle of Adhigamanam. In life itself, your focus should be on learning from every experience. When you meet someone, what can I learn from that person? Through your observation, through your conversations, you can learn something from everyone. If you miss that, then you have missed the opportunity to grow. Experience by experience, you should go on learning. So this entire process, acquiring, obtaining, studying, all these should be done with the spirit of learning. Now, if you follow these steps, then comes the final dimension of Adhigamanam. Adhigamanam means mastery. So the way to gain mastery over anything is by practicing Adhigamanam. He just very easily says, Saha Shantim Adhigacchati. He obtains peace. But how is it that he has done it? He has gone through all this process. So in life, if you want to master anything, just simply apply this principle of Adhigamanam there. Adhigamanam and Vihaya. Once you chalk out a path, then practice Vihaya to ensure that you are consistent in your efforts. And basically, to become a master in any field, you will have to practice the sadhana of Adhigamanam. And here he says, Saha Shantim Adhigacchati. Peace itself is not something which you can just get it just like that. He says that itself requires a lot of effort. See here, What he means by Sahashantim Adhigacchati is he has mastered his mind. He has mastered this art of being peaceful in any situation. See, when he says Sahashantim Adhigacchati, it's easy to be peaceful when everything is going on fine around you. That is not the test of your peace. When something goes wrong outside, are you able to remain peaceful? The mind does not remain peaceful. It immediately gets agitated. No issues. That is why you will have to follow this principle of Adhigamanam very carefully. Go on putting in efforts to acquire. Go on obtaining this wisdom into you. That is, make it your own. Go on studying. Don't leave the swadhyaya, the self-analysis. It is self-analysis which will give you clarity about yourself. And go on learning. Learn from every experience of life. Learning is not restricted only to the Sunday sessions. Sunday, when I attend the Yogishri sessions, I will learn. Otherwise, I will not learn. Then you have not really absorbed the true message of these sessions. Become an eternal student. If you practice all this, then you will start gaining mastery, which is the final dimension of Adhigamanam. Mastery over your own mind. You will start mastering this art of being peaceful. Shantihi means peace. That is the art of being peaceful amidst the various challenges of life. As I told you, it is easy to be peaceful when everything is going on fine. The test of your spiritual development is when something goes wrong outside. How much does it shake you? Everyone will get shaken only. Sthita prajna means one who is steady. Sthita means steady in the awareness, in the wisdom. So, Sthita prajna means not getting shaken by anything. Undisturbed state of peace. In case there is any shaking, immediately you need to get back to the peace. It's a very, very powerful state which he is talking about. So that person who having abandoned, I'm just reading it, summarizing it, that person, Yaha, whoever it may be, who having abandoned all desires, Vihaya Kaman, the 3 steps of Vihaya is practiced, moves about without craving. Nispriha, and without the sense of ego and mindness. Nirahankaraha, no ego. Nirmamaha, without the sense of possessiveness. Such a person, Saha, Shantim Adhigacchati, he obtains peace. So, in every part of this verse, he is stressing on the effort, including that last portion where he says Adhigacchati. Because when you just merely read the meaning in this way, he attains peace, he obtains peace. Now it looks like there is no effort there. No. If you go to the different dimensions of the word Adhigamanam, you find that he attains peace because of all the effort which he has put to acquire this wisdom, to make it his own, to study himself or herself, to learn by being an eternal student, and thus gaining mastery. So since he has done all this, he deserves to be peaceful, he says. That is the true meaning. Saha shantim adhigacchati means here is a person who deserves to be peaceful. So in life, one thing is for you to desire, but you may not get everything which you desire. You will get whatever you deserve. So never ever keep asking for things in life without deserving, that is without putting in the right efforts. See, if you stop someone who is walking on the road, anyone, and ask him, do you want to become a multi-billionaire? He'll say, yeah, how wonderful it will be. And what efforts are you prepared to put? Are you prepared to work for so many hours a day? Are you prepared to do this, do that? He will say, all that I don't want to do, but I want to become a multi-billionaire. This is the general attitude. This is the general approach which people have. Whereas when he says Shaha Shantim Adhigacchati, the word by using the word Adhigacchati, he is telling you that always put in your efforts and deserve things in life. Once you put in the efforts, all the things will come to you automatically. Nobody can stop that. He is trying to reverse your very approach towards life. Your approach today is least efforts, but I will keep asking for everything. He says, okay, you have desires, that is fine, but now focus on becoming qualified. So don't just simply stand there and say, I want to become a Sthita Prajna, I want to become a Sthita Prajna. Just by saying that, you will not become. Just because you move around with a Sthita Prajna, you're in company with a Sthita Prajna, doesn't mean you will become a Sthita Prajna. Supposing you are always moving with a rich person, doesn't mean you will become rich. That person will be rich. In order to become rich, you need to do those things which that person did. So similarly, in order to become a Sthita Prajna, you need to do all this. That principle is being emphasized by this word Adhigacchati. Adhigamanam is the central word. Even though that is the last word of this verse, that is the center when it comes to sadhana. Of this verse I'm saying. So he has ended this verse with Adhigacchati after giving such powerful principles like Nirahankaraha, Nirmama, all that. And finally he says Adhigacchati, you have to practice a sadhana of Adhigamanam. That is what will help you. So becoming a master, it's not anyone's prerogative. It is not determined by birth, culture and all these things. It is determined only by one thing. That is your willpower and your willingness to put in effort. Okay. So now we will go to verse number 72. एषा ब्राह्मी स्थिति पार्थ
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थिति पार्थ. Oh, Partha. Partha is another name of Arjuna. Esha means this. Brahmi Sthitihi. Sthitihi means state. Brahmi means of Brahman. This is the state of Brahman, O Partha. This is a very powerful concluding verse, With so much of command, Krishna is giving this message. This is the state of Brahman, O Partha. Brahman means the infinite supreme reality. Don't confuse Brahman with Lord Brahma. Brahma, as a male gender, refers to the creator, Lord Brahma. Brahman, in the neuter gender, refers to the supreme infinite reality. So this is the state. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha, O Partha. Then he says, Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati. Prapya means once you have obtained this, having attained this, Nainam means na enam vimuhyati. Vimuhyati means you will never be deluded. All your delusions will go away. All your moha will go away. Beautiful line, when he says, having obtained this prapya na enam vimuhyati, all your delusions will just vanish. Stitva asyam antakale api brahma nirvanam richati. I am first translating. See, just when the translation is being done, there is so much of power there, If you just carefully follow, see, you have to tune into the frequency. Then only you will be able to get the benefit. Just by reading the translation, when the verse is translated, that uplifts your consciousness so much. That is the power of these verses, because they've been given by no less a person than Lord Krishna himself, who was an avatar. Any one who is in the highest state, any master, when he utters something, there is so much of power in those words. Why? Because they are these great people. They are talking from a different frequency. From having got established in that state, they are giving out the messages. So it has to have that power. So stitva means having got established in this, as asyam means in this, antakale api. Antakale means at the time of death. That is at the fag end of your life, end of your life. So even api means also, even at the end of your life, if you get established in this, even at the end of your life, Brahma Nirvanam Richati. One attains Brahma Nirvanam. Richati means attaining. Now, Brahma Nirvanam means the ultimate liberation of Brahman. Nirvana means liberation, the ultimate liberation. Brahman means the infinite. When you become one with the infinite, it gives you the ultimate liberation from everything. When your consciousness gets uplifted and expands and becomes one with the infinite, you become 100% free, liberated. It's a powerful expression when he says Brahma Nirvanam. As we go along, when I explain in detail, you'll be able to see the power behind these words. So this is the state of Brahman, O Partha. Very emphatically Krishna concludes. See, when is it that you emphasize on something? When is it that you are very emphatic? When you are in total ignorance, then also you are very emphatic, or you truly know something through experience. When you have experiential knowledge, there is wisdom about something, then also you are emphatic. So this emphasis is coming from that experiential wisdom. So this is the state of Brahman, O Partha. Having attained this, none is deluded. Nobody can be deluded thereafter. Having got established in this, even at the end of life, one attains Brahma Nirvanam, the ultimate liberation of Brahman. Actually, a verse like this, it's very difficult to have lectures on this because it makes you so meditative and it uplifts your consciousness directly and you go off it to meditation. That is why many masters, that is all these great masters, they are very selective about giving the subtler truths. They put the students through a lot of tests because it is not about the words or explanations. It is about catching the frequency, attuning to the frequency of what he is talking about. See, when a student approaches a master, the master is vibrating at a very high frequency, the master's consciousness. And the student's consciousness obviously is at a lower level. Now, when the student meets the master, the student has to do the sadhana and attune to the higher frequency. Then he will be able to receive this wisdom with the energy. There is so much of energy in this verse. When you absorb that energy, it automatically transports you to a different frequency. So this being the concluding verse of this chapter, Krishna concludes this chapter in a very emphatic way, in a very powerful way. See, whenever a master communicates, you will find that the impact of that communication will last forever. See, generally when you communicate in a superficial way, the impact which it has on the other person who has received it will be short-lived. Whereas when a master communicates, the ending, the final punch which the master gives after preparing the student to a very good extent, when the master ends the communication, he always ends it with a punch. And that punch will remain with you for life. Here, it's only the second chapter which is concluding. There itself, so powerfully ended. I'll tell you why. See, this Bhagavad Gita can be divided in very many ways. One of the ways is the first chapter actually explained to you what the problem is. When Arjuna went through so much of turmoil, inner stress and all that, that is explaining the psychology of the mind. To what extent the mind can deteriorate. What are all the various negative forces which can come and engulf you. So that was explained in detail. Now when it came to the second chapter, he started off at a very high frequency when Krishna started talking. And then the Sthita Prajna, where he fixes the ultimate goal first. So the second chapter is entitled Sankhya Yoga. It contains the deepest principles of life, and the emphasis is being laid on the highest goal. What is your ultimate mission in life? That is to reach the state of a Sthita Prajna, to become enlightened. That message is being driven home very powerfully. So when he concludes here, he concludes it in a very powerful way. This is number one. Number two, when Arjuna asked this question about the Sthita Prajna, I think it was in verse number 54, where he asked Krishna, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha, means how will a man, the person who has achieved enlightenment, how will that person walk, how will that person talk, how will the person sit? Like that he was asking. Now the fact that Arjuna is asking Krishna to describe how a Sthita Prajna will walk, talk and all that mean, he has not recognized Krishna as a master. Krishna was actually was an avatar, but to recognize Krishna as an avatar requires enormous tapas. But at least as someone who's got this wisdom, who has reached a very high level. Now, even that Arjuna didn't see Krishna in that sense. That is why he is asking Krishna about a Sthita Prajna. If he wanted to know how a Sthita Prajna will function, why does he need to ask Krishna to explain? All he had to do was just look at Krishna. How will a Sthita Prajna walk? Krishna was walking, no? More than enough. How will he talk? Exactly this way. How will he function? How Krishna was functioning. It's like going to a multi-billionaire and asking that person, can you describe a multi-billionaire? It means you have not recognized that person as a multi-billionaire. But Krishna was so humble naturally. He never said, how dare you ask me to describe a Sthita Prajna? Listen, I am a Sthita Prajna. He didn't say all that. There is no ego, nothing. He understood Arjuna's limitations. This is what Arjuna's level of understanding is. He is seeing me as his close friend. So he continued the exposition as a friend, not as a guru straight away. So he just kept explaining things. But how is he going to make Arjuna understand what his level is? That process he starts off in this verse by emphatically saying, this is the state of Brahman. If you can just visualize this, don't read these verses, this is the state of Brahman, no Partha, having attained this, none is there. If you read it like that, there is no power. You should first visualize, imagine the scene. Arjuna is there, Krishna is there, the great Jagat Guru, the universal master, the the avatar is there giving this wisdom, and this person is not recognizing him. So unless he recognizes Krishna's spiritual greatness, how is he going to receive that energy? So directly if Krishna says, listen, I am spiritual, I am a master and all that, it will not work. So he is taking the indirect approach here by emphatically making a statement. So you should just visualize that, how emphatic Krishna would have been. This is the state of Brahman, O Partha, take it or leave it. The amount of power that has, when you can visualize it that way. So Arjuna must have been shocked. It would have created a tremendous impact on Arjuna. See, when a master becomes authoritative, that completely engulfs a student. But actually, generally speaking, no master will be authoritative, because a master is like a child. That's what Krishna was. But here, there was a necessity to emphasize. Authoritative means not out of force, external force. That is, he is 200% sure when he says this is the state of Brahman. So even though Arjuna saw Krishna as a friend, when it was stated to him in such a powerful way, his subconscious mind will start working. Subconsciously, he will be able to feel that the powerful energy of Krishna, that authoritative presence of Krishna. So you need to first approach this verse in the right way. So this is the state of Brahman, O Partha. First level of authority. He's making that statement from experience. Having attained this, none is deluded. Again, a statement of authority. Authority, again, he's not standing at a higher pedestal and talking. That is ego. No, he is experiencing that and he's talking from the experience. So there is a surety about it. So having attained this, none is deluded. All your delusions will go away. So when you attune to that frequency, immediately you will develop so much of faith in the words of these great masters that will enrich you, that will uplift you. Having got established in this, even at the end of life, one attains the ultimate liberation of Brahman. Again, a powerful statement coming from the ultimate experience. It is only a person who has experienced Brahman who can make such a statement with that authority. A master's authority does not come from the external knowledge gained from the scriptures. The master's authority does not come from the hearsay, from what he has heard from others. A master's authority comes from his own experience. The scriptural knowledge will be useful in communication. That is a different matter. But the authority comes, the power, the energy comes from the inner experience. Whatever you have experienced to your core, you will be able to communicate to others. Whatever you have not experienced, it is just mere information. There will be no power in that. So this week, today especially, after the session is over, of course I know you're going to write down the points and all that, but just before that, after the session is over, just sit with this verse number 72, and read the translation. This is the state of Brahman, O Partha. With all devotion, humility, just feel that as if Lord Krishna is in front of you and uttering these words, with that power. You're gaining the wisdom from the great Lord. With that feeling, just read this translation. Even throughout the week, whenever you get time, you don't need to analyze and try to understand anything. I want you to just get attuned to the frequency of the Master here. The more you attune to the frequency of Lord Krishna, the more you will be able to absorb this wisdom. So you do this sadhana for this week whenever you get some spare time. No need to overdo it also. Just at least once a day. Read this translation. Think that you are only Arjuna. And when you are reading it, it is Krishna who is talking to you, This is the state of Brahman, O Partha. Partha means you. Every individual should take it as himself or herself. So as if it's a direct message for you. So if you do that sadhana this week and then come back next week, you will be well prepared to receive the energy of this concluding verse. Okay? So we'll continue with this verse next week. Now we will do the meditation. Sit in a relaxed way. Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. With every breath, I am becoming more and more divine. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am not this intellect. I am that supreme Brahman, the infinite reality. My purpose in life is to become one with the infinite. I choose to do my sadhana consistently towards becoming a sthita prajna. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illuminating. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Wriggle your fingers, your toes. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, cheeks, forehead, top of the head, back of the head and neck. Slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So today's meditation was very powerful. With that power, with that energy, you'll be able to do that small sadhana which I've asked you to do this week. That is reading this verse number 72 with that bhavana. Don't try to intellectually understand anything. Anyway, we are going to go into the depth of the verses as we go along. But the sadhana here is to just directly feel the energy which the words of the master has, See, these small practices which I am giving you every now and then, if you do them diligently, they will actually make you very subtle. They'll make you so subtle and receptive to gain the higher grace. So take it up very seriously and with all sincerity. do your sadhana, and come back next week. In the next session, we will go into more depth of what this verse has to give. Again, it is not about intellectual depth. If you can go into the depth of this verse, you can directly receive the higher energy, because these are all statements of authority given by Lord Krishna. So it is easy to just merely intellectually explain this verse, and that's a shallow way of doing it. But to really tune into that frequency and receive the higher energy is what the yogic approach is all about. Okay? So thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Hari Om.